All right, all right, all right. You're listening to the We're Talking Football podcast. I'm Weston. With me, as always, my right hand man, Lou. Lou, tonight it is fair to say that we round out our free agency coverage as we recap what has taken place over the last few months. More importantly, we took ourselves a few weeks off here. We let some major storylines and moves shake out. And here we are. It's a pleasure to be back chatting with you, man.
Yeah, no, I think we needed those couple of weeks. The free agency shows, albeit they are really fun, but they do take a lot of work and a lot of time. And as correct as we've been in the past, it's not just us just slapping names to teams and stuff like that. We really do take pride in that. But I feel rejuvenated, feel good. I just hope I remember, how to do a podcast, right now because it's been a couple of weeks.
I mean, dude, I struggled kicking us off just to even hit the record button. I was feeling a little rusty, but if I had to summarize what's taken place in the entertainment world over the last 25, 30 days, call it, I would say two things. The AFC West went bananas and Will Smith slapped Chris Rock in the face on national television. That's basically what has transpired over the last handful of weeks
And like a
since we
little war
last.
out there in out there in this country called Ukraine too, I think.
That's why I specifically said entertainment world, right?
Ah,
Like I don't want to overlook a serious, absurd matter that is taking place that um, needs support, needs to be addressed. It just shows you how sick this world really, really is, and
but
that
let's digress. Let's this is
yeah,
about enjoyment
yeah.
here.
Let's just say we're fortunate enough that we get to be doing this podcast this
Of
evening, and
course.
to everybody in the Ukraine, our heart goes out to you. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Um, Lou, I love one of the things that you said when we were planning for tonight's episode. So I'm going to steal your thunder here, and I'm going to say let's refer to this as tonight is a six pack evening with Weston and Lou. We hope you enjoy it, but we're going to run through a series of, I'll say, questions slash word associations to recap free agency up until this point. We're going to call out some specific moves made. We're going to talk about how maybe some teams particularly fared. But without further ado, let's get into our word or paragraph association game because I have much more than a few words to say about some of these things in order to recap free agency. Since I get the honors of always doing our intro, I always tend to give you the honors of kicking us off from a content perspective. So, Lou, I'll ask you to fill in the blank here.
Okay.
And it goes a little something like this. This free agency period has been dot 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 question mark.
Revolutionary. And let me tell you why.
Yeah, I was gonna
I
say, don't stop there, please. Keep going.
Yeah, no, obviously. Let me elaborate here. The amount of trades we have seen, and the moves we've seen this free agency period, I feel like has been bar none the most active I've ever seen in years prior. It's always been, I felt like the NFL, it's always like, the trade deadline was never anything to look forward to. Off season, yes, the signings, but you never traded in the NFL. So I think it's just crazy. So let's from two aspects here. First, the talent that was been traded that did not net first round picks. You got players like Matt Ryan, Khalil Mack, Amari Cooper, and Robert Woods, all traded. Big name, high profile players, but they were moved for minimal assets, right? Then on the flip side, let's talk about the boatload of trades that followed like the Les Snead approach of fuck those picks, yo. The New Orleans Philly trade, the Tyreek Hill trade, the Deshaun Watson trade, the Russell Wilson trade. The idea of including future first round or future draft capital, and like you know, out the future draft capitals from like 1 to 3 years out is starting to become a trend in the NFL. Started by the LA Rams, and this is something you normally see in the NBA. You would never see this in the NFL. So I starting to see that the NFL is starting to become not your daddy's NFL, not your daddy's league anymore. It's more revolutionary, it's more current, modern, and you can see that probably with all the analytics that's been in the game. And that's why this free agency period, I say, is revolutionary.
Yeah, I totally agree. The word I would use is bonkers versus revolutionary. But we're saying the same thing. We're saying that unprecedented territory. It's not uncommon for big names to change teams in free agency and they go take their bag, but they're literally by definition a free agent able to negotiate with other teams and they go and swap out jerseys is essentially what happens, right? But you mentioned it, like Matt Ryan, a staple in Atlanta and a different team. Russell Wilson, a staple in Seattle playing for a different team. Khalil Mack,
These are Super Bowl
superstar.
those are Super Bowl quarterbacks, man.
Yeah.
For them to get traded like that?
It just wild, dude. Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams, the list goes on. Deshaun Watson, like the list just goes on and on and on. And that's the biggest thing to me is you hit the nail on the head. Trade deadline comes and goes every single year in the NFL, and special team players get swapped, right? Even trades in the offseason, more happen than we actually realize, but they're lesser name players that are not headline players, and they're special teams stop gaps. They're swapped out for 6th and 7th round picks and future picks that teams weren't planning to make anyway. But like big names got traded this off season. And there's a few reasons why, and we'll dive into that in just a moment. But you say revolutionary, I say bonkers. So let me go ahead and pose the very next question to you in this sequence, which is in this revolutionary period, to steal your term, the biggest winner of free agency is.
I'm gonna throw you a curveball here. I'm not gonna name a player. I'm not gonna name a team.
Oh, you stole mine. Then I should have went first.
You should have went wide receiver contracts. Those are the biggest winners in free agency. Look at the contracts that have been, handed out this year. Before it was always the quarterbacks getting paid, the edge rushers, and the offensive tackles. Those were the premium positions always getting played. However, even though there are more pro-ready wide receivers coming out in the draft, teams are running 11 personnel, so 3 wide receivers at an alarming rate. It's increasing to 62% of the time. So in 2021, they ran 3 wide receiver sets 62% of the time. The need for 3 wide receivers is greater now than ever. So look what the Rams did with Odell. And they got Robert. They had Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. They decided to bring in Odell. Robert Woods got hurt. All right. Look at the Bengals. Those big 3 receivers. This is a trend that's becoming in this league. So listen to these contracts. Michael Gallup, 5 years, $62.5 million. And I know that, by the way, forewarning, I know this is not real money contract. I get that. But just the numbers do sound alarming.
No, but they all have big money, big guarantees too.
Yeah.
So like the real money is real money in there.
Yeah. DJ Moore, 3 years, $61.9 million. Mike Williams, 3 years, $60 million. Chris Godwin, 3 years, $60 million. Stephon Diggs, 4 years, $96 million. Christian Kirk, 4 years, $72 million, worth up to $84 million. Are you out of your mind? Tyreek Hill, 4 years, $120 million. And Devontae Adams, 5 years, $141.25 million, which is crazy when you're thinking about it, because after he signed that deal with the Raiders, if you compared his contract to quarterback contracts, he would have been the 12th highest quarterback with that contract. That's how high his contract was.
Dude, it is wild. All right, gun to your head though. You're spot on, right? Like, can I make a counter argument to what's happening with the wide receivers?
Okay.
Lou, you and I, we joked about this before we even hit record on this. We're a little bit older than we used to be. You just alluded to that it's not your daddy's NFL. It's not our NFL anymore that we grew up watching. 15 years ago, what was the most premium position on the football field outside of quarterback on your offense?
Running back.
Yeah. Teams that won had the best running game. What is the least valued position on the offensive side of the ball in this day and age?
100%. It's a running back. It's like running a fact. Back.
I believe this will eventually happen to wide receivers as well. Even though this league is going to a passing league, the quarterback will always remain number one, is pivotal. They're the only player that touches the ball outside of the center on every single snap. But the reality is, I think teams are going to start to realize that like there's not a huge difference between second, third, and even fourth wide receivers. What I'm saying is like teams are starting to value running backs as a dime a dozen. Wide receivers are not like, I think people forget that there's not a huge difference in skill. Like to get to the NFL, to be a practice squad player, to get a tryout in the NFL, you're in the top 0.5% athletes in the entire world. We make the argument all the time that for some of these players, it's right place, right time, right system, and you just need to be given an opportunity. We talk about Tom Brady, the greatest of all time. Don't tell me he's not a product of opportunity. With Drew Bledsoe going down, a 6th-round draft pick, when you saw that man run a 40 at the combine, nobody in their right mind ever thought that this man was going to be what he was going to be. Right place, right time, took advantage of his opportunity. I do think we're a ways away from it, but I do think the value of, I mean, Christian Kirk is a number 2 wide receiver. He's not a number 1 wide receiver making anywhere from $17 to $21 million a year. That stuff's going to go away in a handful of years when like like the Shanahans of the world kind of proved that like, just give me any running back. He just needs to meet this few criteria and I'll put him for 1,000 yards year over year over year. Just on to the next, on to the next, on to the next. That's going to happen in this NFL as well.
Can I counter your counter argument?
Sure.
I think that in order to be successful in the NFL, you need to have 3 playmakers at the skill position. And when I mean the skill position, I'm talking about wide receivers and tight ends. I'm not including running backs. I know they're a skill position, but listen, you need to have 3. So whether it's 2 wide receivers and a tight end, my thought process is this: tight ends, I would think that they're the ones that are maybe fading to the background here. There's only a handful of really good tight ends, probably about 6 to 7 tops, and then you got these players in college that go in as tight ends, but then they bulk up, and what do they become? Offensive tackles, because there's more money in offensive tackles than tight ends. So I actually think the reverse. I think that we'll start getting, because of the lack of quality tight ends. Look at this draft, by the way. There's no going to be the first round, first round tight ends in this draft. So I think it'll start maybe 4 wide receivers, 10 personnel and a running back. So I actually completely disagree with you, and I think your sentiment's right, but it's with the tight end as opposed to the receivers.
So here's why I completely disagree with you regarding the tight end. What's the premium position on the defensive side of the ball?
Edge rusher.
Edge rusher. That's never going to go away either. Pressure the quarterback. Until you show me a team that normalizes a 6th offensive lineman some way, somehow, even they've disguised him in a 40 through 80 number, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's going to be, now, there's not a lot of them, and there's not a lot of them because the ones that are uber athletic are like, fuck it, I'll just put an 80 on my jersey number, right? And I'll just split it out wide and I'll make 3X, right? Like, totally get it. But if you look at the ones who are established right now in the NFL, I'd say the Kittles, the Kelseys, Ertz, the list goes on, Goddard, you know what I mean? Like, there are some good tight ends in the NFL. Kelsey's not the best blocker out of all of them, but like, I mean, look what George Kittle just took in terms of compensation in his contract, and he does both equally as well, and he gives them a distinct advantage, a la we're playing the LA Chargers this year. Don't be surprised when Kittle spends more time shadowing Khalil Mack wherever he might be on the field, or Bosa, or whoever it might be, helping out that offensive lineman. So
I'm not saying I understand what you're saying, so I'm not going to say I just think it'll be more of a tight end by committee type of approach, where you're going to have the tight ends in line.
The tight end as a playmaker is what you're saying is going to dissipate over time.
Yeah.
I disagree, but we can, but that's why we do this, because
that's neither here nor there.
When do we ever agree? And time will tell. But I do think the NFL will slowly realize that like all skill position players are like a dime a dozen. Like these guys are the uber athletes of the world. Like all
Yeah.
somebody has to do is take advantage of their chance.
Yeah, tell it to the Jaguars, tell it to the Jets, tell that to a lot of those
Yeah.
other teams, or the Giants. Tell that
I,
to the Texans. They're not. I wouldn't. Tell it to the Eagles.
what are,
I know they have
what are
Devontae Smith, but
what do all those teams not have that we talk about as the most important position on the field? They don't have the quarterback that they
yeah,
want yet. And the Jets, I'm saying, we'll see, right? TBD, but they haven't had that person in a while, in quite some time. But
since like what Joe Namath probably, right?
yeah, since you got a dude arrogant enough to predict winning the Super Bowl.
All right, next one.
All right. Well, I didn't even get to go with mine because I was counter arguing
Oh
you.
yeah, my bad.
All right. So you actually didn't take mine. I was given to give a cop out answer as well. No team here, but to me, it's the NFL. The NFL is the biggest winner of the free agency, and when I say the NFL, the brand, the shield, the logo, the business entity. You talked about unprecedented, right? Like territory that we were in, like what you saw take place in a 25-day window has just been a huge boost to the brand. Like when I could sit there and talk to my wife and be like, Russell Wilson is now a Denver Bronco. And she's like, what? You know what I mean? Like it's now those types of moves, those types of splashes reach much more than just the common NFL fan, even the diehard NFL fan. We're not at NBA status yet where you're just building dream teams and it's like, hey, come play with me because the salary cap prohibits all of that from happening. But they're making strides towards it, right? Like they're making strides.
Maybe the next CBA.
Yeah, which is, I mean, well, they just did one in 2020, right? So what do
So
they
it's
got?
like
10 years?
8 years, 9 years
Yeah,
left.
yeah. So, but this is as close as it's ever been where like I want out. All right, let's get what we can get for you and move on. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what's happening with some of these players, or just a team being like, I want that guy. And I don't care about like you remember when future draft picks were a premium, like when you like on the point system, they were worth more than draft picks like this year because you didn't know where, like it just to your point, it just doesn't matter anymore. Teams are just like,
Everyone, yeah,
see ya.
everyone made fun of the Les Snead and the Rams for like how they did business, but them going to 2 Super Bowls, I feel like show them that they're not splash in the pan. And there's a method behind their madness. You don't have to do everything that the old school mentality away. And I feel like that's starting to catch like wildfire. That all right, maybe it's not built through the draft and like add through supplemental through free agency. Maybe the thought process is now like the draft is a crapshoot, and I'd rather get a known player. It shores up my team quicker, and it's a better marketing ploy for the fans too.
So outside of my choice of the NFL, I did put a gun to my head and I did make myself pick a team for this. And I'll give you the chance to quickly refute if you're prepared to do that. I was torn between two teams in this free agency period. I honestly really, really like what the New York Jets have been doing. Yeah, the signing of Laken Tomlinson, another body on that offensive line. I think re-signing Braxton Berrios, even though you talked about what the wide receiver position is getting paid right now. He just fits what they're trying to do out there. He's a gimmicky player. Jordan Whitehead for safety, DJ Reed, bringing in CJ Uzama like at tight end. We always talked about when was the last time they had a tight end that wasn't named Anthony Becht, right? Like small little pieces. And then this year is like you get Carl Lawson back. Like there are just things like, are the New York Jets there yet? No, but they weren't out Jacksonville Jaguars spending, even though they had the resources to do it. I think they made strategic young additions to the team, but they're not my choice. I'm just saying for New York Jet listeners, I'm in line with what you guys are doing right now. And you got draft picks, right? So like you're going to get younger, you're going to get better, and you're going to get cheaper, which is even crazier. But to me, and you might even disagree with this. I don't think in your heart, I don't think you do, but like the critical fan in you definitely does. Without question, the Los Angeles Chargers are the winner of this free agency period so far.
I think you're also okay. So I thought you were like foreshadowing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's close. What they did, they added to the defense and two thresholds. We always battle what's more important, an edge rusher or cornerback. I'm team edge rusher always. Your team cornerback.
And you
Uh,
added both. And you
and
added
that's
both.
the thing. That's the thing. So we added both, and I've last year we did a show about ranking our top edge rushers. I think I had Khalil Mack as my top, my third ranked edge rusher, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe, yeah. I think I'm at third, and he's just more than an edge rusher. He's really good against the run too. I'm a big fan. Everyone talk about the injuries. All right, he got hurt last year. I get that, but he had 6 sacks in 7 games. The guy he's replacing, Uchenna Nwosu, had 6 sacks in 17 games. So, huh? Uh, let's just say if Khalil Mack was able to finish his season last year, and maybe it was a business decision because they weren't going anywhere, he was having double-digit sacks. He's probably having 12 to 15. I think that's fair to say if he has 6 and
Yep.
7 games, so he's probably having 12 to 15, and this is a completely different thing. So they added both, and they all add some beef in Austin Johnson and Sebastian Joseph Day, which I like because both Khalil Mack and Sebastian Joseph Day, not only do they improve a weakness, but they're familiar with the scheme. There's no learning curve with those guys. They're coming in, they know exactly what they need to do, and that's huge. So they really revamped that defense, and they had to because we're going to talk about a little later about what's going on in that Wild Wild West.
Yep. I think the one that you're leaving out in the equation, outside the sexy splashes, I agree with the Sebastian Joseph Day, Austin Johnson. The one addition that I really like for them is Gerald Everett.
Yeah, I
I,
mean,
dude, as someone who has seen him many times in many uniforms, he's a football player, and he's a complementary piece to what this offense has like been trying to do. And here's the most important piece. You talked about an edge and a corner. You talked about bolstering the defensive line, adding a little bit of an offensive weapon. I know you're still sour on the right tackle situation. That'll be addressed in the draft, especially with this. The AFC West is what it is, and the defenses. But you put yourself in a position as a team to take the best available player every single time you pick, and that is
I
the most envious place any football team can be.
I will agree with you. Every year, I'm dead on at least the position I know what the Chargers are going to draft in the first round of the NFL draft. This year, I don't have a clue because I really do think they're probably going to go BPA, best player available. But this year, like I said, I have ideas, but it's not certain. That there's probably 4 different positions they can add on, and it's all because it's the best player available. So.
Yeah, I think that statement alone, too many times, and like the beat writers, they all talk about it, right? Like they just try to draw straight lines. Like the position of need for this team is edge rusher. Where's most logical to draft an edge rusher with your first round pick, right? And then teams reach and do all those things. Like the Chargers can literally sit back and be like, I'm gonna take the best player available based on what their board looks like. If they need to slide out, they'll slide out. No harm, no foul. They'll, increase their capital and use that as a chess piece to move around and go get the guys that are on Brandon Staley's draft board, right? Like that's a big win for them to be in that position, especially in this division. Like that's why they're that final statement outside of the names to be in that position to me is they're one of the very few teams that are still sitting that way.
Well, they're going to need all the help they can get. So.
Yeah, and anything that gets an added bonus, dude. Like
Yeah.
it's an added bonus. You get a like okay, so you take Penning at 17, right? Like okay, what's wrong? I know you don't like it, but like okay, we all talked about the right tackle needs to be addressed. Now
So
it's addressed.
all right. So if we're really going down this rabbit hole, I have to. I was having a conversation with someone on Twitter today in regards about this. Just because people think that it's a need, doesn't mean the team thinks it's a need. So everyone's talking about the Chargers drafting a right tackle, and yes, they do need a right tackle. doesn't mean their right tackle isn't already on their roster. They're flirting with the idea of kicking out Matt Filer, their left guard who started last year, to right tackle. And now you're like, oh, how can you do that? Let's not forget the year before Matt Filer started for the Pittsburgh Steelers at right
Right
tackle.
tackle. Yep.
So they would move him to right tackle, and they have a young up-and-coming guard named Brandon Jameis or Hymus from Nebraska that really flashed well during preseason, and they liked him a lot. Wanted to get him bigger, stronger. It's his second year now, so maybe they kick him to left guard. And like I said, just because I don't like this plan, but just because we perceive it as a need doesn't mean they do.
Yeah.
And it makes them go best player available still too. They have options. They're not, in their heads, I feel like they don't have to go right tackle at 17. If he's there, he's there. If someone's there, he's there.
If the guy's there on their board that they had slated as a top 10 pick and they're picking at 17, like everybody's draft board looks entirely different.
Yeah.
And some of it is influenced
Especially
by
this
what
year.
the team needs. Yeah, this year is just wild. Can't wait for these shows.
Yep.
Spoiler alert, those are coming up. All right, let's slide out of this.
Biggest. How about this? Yeah, I'll ask you now.
All right.
Ready? Because I always feel like I go. All right, we just discussed the biggest winner. You know what's coming next, Weston? The biggest loser of free agency is.
So if you were to ask me this question after the first 2 to 3 days of free agency, I would have said the Jacksonville Jaguars, hands down. Christian Kirk for $17 to $21 million per year. Evan Ingram signing. They spent a lot of money on a guard in Brandon Scherf. But I actually love how they rebounded towards the end of that first and into the second wave of free agency with names like Zay Jones, Arden Key, Darius Williams, my boy Foye Olokun. I think they recovered a little bit. They overpaid for all of these people, but they were in a position to do that. And those are better suited names. So to me, the biggest loser in free agency, and I could have gone a couple different ways here. I'm saving one team for another question that we're going to address. But to me, the biggest loser in free agency is the Green Bay Packers.
Okay.
They extended Rodgers on a monster deal of hopes of like running it back to then going to lose arguably the best wide receiver in football, specifically in 2021. This just doesn't like add up for me. They like, again, like the whole, and I'll talk more about this in a little bit because we have a very specific question related to it, but like, wasn't the Rodgers mantra of like, I want to go win. I want to win one more before I hang it up. And all he did was basically prove to you that that was a bunch of bullshit and he wanted to go get paid, right? Like highest paid quarterback in the NFL, whatever it is. And at the time, and that's what that contract became. And his best weapon is gone. And I don't care what you got in return for him. That's not adding up to be Devontae Adams. And losing Devontae Adams to now have, and then on top of it, you lost other wide receivers that have familiarity with the
MVS.
obvious and MVS. Like, so who is Randall Cobb or Alan Lazard, the number one target for Aaron Rodgers right now? There's still some names out. But
yeah, Julio Jones, Odell Beckham.
Yeah. Dude, you can bring both of them in, and where they are in their careers, they're not matching Devontae Adams' production. None of them are. So a team that for the last 3 years has finished with 13 wins or better, has played in two of the last 3 years played in the NFC Championship game. This team is damn lucky that they play in the NFC North, because what I see, like, no player should have that type of impact, but Devontae Adams has that type of impact, and they did nothing to help themselves to this point in free agency outside of now. What do we always talk about? Name me a Super Bowl team that wins when their quarterback equates for more than 20% or 15% of the cap, and my man's like 30% of the cap. You know, like, where are they going? Aaron Rodgers is getting paid. It is what it is. He'll take it with his State Farm commercials. To me, the Green Bay Packers are going to be a shell of what they've been. They'll win the North, but a shell of what they've been in the regular season.
I think them playing in the NFC North buys them a little, and with this draft class coming up, that's loaded at the wide receiver position. I think, in my opinion, I think the jury's still out. It's an incomplete for me. But what's not an incomplete for me, my biggest loser of this NFL offseason is Atlanta Falcons. This close. They were this close to bringing the prodigal son, Deshaun Watson, back home.
Back to yep.
Back home. They were this close, man. And if they were able to pull that off, they would have ran the NFC South for years to come. You think Darnold's gonna, or whatever rookie quarterback the Panthers are gonna throw out there? You think they would have competed with Deshaun Watson? You think Jameis Winston and the Falcons would compete with Deshaun Watson? Just like they did in Super Bowl 51, they blew it. This was identical to that 28-3, loss right there. Add insult to injury. They lost their cornerstone of a quarterback, Matt Ryan, and they got a third-round pick for him, bro. A third-round pick. That is insane. You give a franchise quarterback, I get it, albeit he is old and up there in age, but he still has some juice left in him, maybe 2-3 more years. But you eat all that dead money and you get a third-round pick for Matt Ryan. Could even trade Calvin Ridley because of that fiasco. Yep. So you get no draft capital there whatsoever. Last year, we got rid of Julio Jones. You got a second and a fourth. You didn't even get a first-round draft pick. Insane. In my opinion, you look at this roster, they are in no man's land. There's no identity with them. They've put all their chips into Deshaun Watson, gamble, and it blew up in their face. And now they're walking away from the poker table with their pockets out, man. They are the biggest loser in this NFL free agency.
Dude, it's so funny because when I was looking and like kind of recapping before I decided to go with the Packers, I was like, I could literally pick any team in the NFC South right now.
Yeah,
like they're all outside of like obviously the Buccaneers. I mean, they win because they bring Tom Brady back, but like between the Panthers, the Saints, and the Falcons, they all felt like losers this offseason. Where my heart goes out to the Atlanta Falcons is it's not for lack of effort. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure they did everything that they thought they possibly could.
Dude, they had like Jermaine Dupri and like Ludacris, like all them were rolling out the red carpet. Yeah,
but
it was money talks, man.
Money talks, bullshit walks, and Deshaun Watson probably took a second look at that roster and was like, I can't do it all.
Yeah, but if he went
can't
there,
do it all. Can't do it all.
They could have, they would have an early draft pick this, with Pitts and a wide receiver, and I don't know. He had worse at Houston towards the end of his Houston stay.
What did Cleveland have to give up for him again? I forget.
A bolo of picks, man.
Yeah, I don't even think Atlanta had the collateral to do it.
They were going to give up players.
They don't have any players.
No, okay. I think I'm not sure if it was like AJ Terrell they were going to throw in there or someone else. I'm blanking out who what players they were looking at. But yeah, they were gonna throw in some players, but that's neither here nor there. They are the loser of this free agency, in my honest opinion.
Can't dispute it. All right. What do you think is the biggest surprise move in free agency thus far?
I think you alluded to it before in our last piece right here, the Davante Adams trade. All right, so when we did our NFL free agency, we were talking about the AFC West and pretty much how the Chargers, reamped up with all that extra, acquisitions they did. The Chiefs are the Chiefs. The Broncos were on Russell Wilson, and this was before the Raiders did anything, man. And we're like, maybe the Raiders should kind of like punt. We talked about this when we covered the AFC West. How the hell they're going to compete with these three monster teams, man? And lo and behold, boom. I remember exactly where it was Friday night, and the Davante Adams news came out, and I was like, what? And I was shocked for numerous reasons. First reason, really? you think when Aaron Rodgers coming back to Green Bay, it's an automatic assumption that he's going to, Batman and Robin are coming, but you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like
Yeah.
you're gonna have that tandem. Like
Why
I
go
just
back?
I
You
was
know?
utterly shocked, right? Utterly shocked because I just thought that was like the assumption. There you go, and I get it. Adams wants to go back and play with his college quarterback, and Derek Carr. But listen, this is he's not gonna be playing against teams out there. This isn't Fresno State anymore. And let me tell you something, Weston. Right, Devontae Adams is one of my favorite wide receivers, and I think he's probably the best out there. I get Cooper Kupp was the Triple Crown winner, but I just love his skill set the most of all of them. So let me tell you something. I've tried to do things by how I used to do things back in college. Drink or what have you, play a game of basketball. It never turns out well the next day. Never turns out well. And we always make jokes, Weston, about this. Where do players go? Where do players' careers go to die?
To the Raiders.
And I know this is not going to happen, but I don't know how you're telling me that he's going to be
Yeah.
better with Derek Carr than he was with Aaron Rodgers.
Not possible. Not possible.
I mean, I don't know, but that was all. But make a long story short, that was my biggest surprise. It's just the fact that when Rodgers came back, I'm like, Adams is staying there. That had to be talked about, and I just was flabbergasted. And I was also flabbergasted the compensation they received. I thought they could have done more, got more.
I thought they like legally had to. When you franchise somebody, doesn't it require 2 first round picks to get that person when they're franchise tagged? I thought that was like the rule. So real quick, because I agree with you on the in regards to the Devontae Adams being such a surprise. I do totally agree with that, just because like there is Devontae Adams, like we joke, going to go die with the Raiders? No.
No,
Derek Carr is not a slouch. He's just not Aaron Rodgers, right? And that rapport that they've built is, I don't care what rapport they had at Fresno. I actually work with a former teammate of theirs from Fresno State that still knows these guys, and I know they were actually out on the golf course together last week, loving life, Derek Carr and Devontae Adams. But that being said, like to expect the same production from this individual, it's just not realistic. Like, it's just not like Aaron Rodgers puts the ball where only Devontae Adams can make the play on the ball. And yes, Devontae gets open and runs stellar routes and does all of that. And he'll continue to do that. Just because he's playing for the Raiders doesn't mean his route running ability is going to change. It's the quarterback delivering the ball. It's other things around. It's the way the offense is schemed. Who's calling the offense? Like whose eyes the offense is being seen through. And the biggest surprise for me on that is like you, me, and everybody else in the world thought when Aaron Rodgers was going back, there's no way like that Tay wasn't coming back to run this damn thing back. Like you 13, 14. That's how many games they've won in each season over the last 3 years with just those two. Like not even like a stud arsenal around them,
So counterpoint. Maybe Adams does still continue his production. Maybe not be better, but he does. And let me tell you why.
He'll produce, just not at the same level.
He has other players on that offense that draw attention away from him. Darren Waller, Hunter Renfrow.
Only one rock to be distributed. And in Green Bay, he was a huge part of the distribution. In Las Vegas, he's going to be a primary target, but there are other options to get the ball too. Like what made them so good is everybody on the planet knew the ball was going to Devontae Adams. Everybody on big plays, everybody on the planet knew it was going. Number 12 found a way to get it there. Number 4 doesn't have the same capability. Just doesn't. And it's not a knock. Like Aaron Rodgers, outside of his playoff blunders, Like if he had a different playoff record, you'd be talking about this as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game, what his natural ability allows him to do. You're never going to say that about Derek Carr. He's a highly skilled individual. I'd be fine if he was my quarterback, but there's a huge difference. And what's the old saying? It takes two to tango, right? Like, and the wide receiver can't be the better of the equation because somebody has to get him that ball. It's just kind of the way that I view me. I'm staying with wide receiver. The biggest surprise for me is the Tyreek Hill move.
Yep, yeah.
I mean, it was splitting hairs between these two. Another like what, like where did this come from? Like your primary weapon, like your guy, like your I call him your Swiss Army knife of your offense, what Andy Reid likes to do and the trickery he likes to fool and the Hail Mary nonsense, where Mahomes can just air it out and Tyreek is somehow, some way 20 yards further downfield than anybody else on the field. I was floored by that, like literally floored. And you want to talk about giving up a boatload, and then what they paid that man when he came over to the tune of $30 million a year. And this is just proof. Like everybody says the salary cap is fake. Everybody says the salary cap is fake. There's ways to manipulate it, but every once in a while, a team has to draw a line in the sand. And the line in the sand was Andy Reid and Brett Leach being like, or however you pronounce his last name, Veach or Leach, I forget what it is. Veach, right? Was just like, nah, guy, you're not $30 million a year to us. That's what it came down to. Like, and somebody was knocking on the door and willing to give them all that. They took it and ran.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I think you said where this come from. This came from the Devontae Adams contract. I felt like they were in the red zone trying to re-sign Tyreek Hill. Never crossed the goal line. Kind of dragged their feet. Devontae Adams signs his contract, and Hill and his representatives push back like, wait a minute. No, thank you. Between Devontae Adams and Christian Kirk's deal, I think they had to reassess. Now, I mean, obviously, I don't have any source or anything, but just my opinion. So now you got Kansas City looking at what's going on in the AFC West. But like, we can't keep on doing what we're doing and be able to compete with these teams. I think we have to become a deeper team, a more complete team. If we give Hill this deal, we're going to be top heavy, top talent heavy, and be really deficient in a lot of areas. And it's just going to be all over again. So I feel like they made a good move. People are going to say, oh, it's Tyreek Hill. I get it. But I think they're going to build something completely different. And Andy Reid is still the best coach out there in the AFC West. Patrick Mahomes is still the best quarterback out there in the AFC West. And when you have those two, you're always going to be in it. And I really think they're going to build a completely different team. It's going to be more ball controlling, maybe not a deep shot mentality. It's going to be more West Coast. Don't forget, Andy Reid is a West Coast offensive guy here. I think it's going to be quicker passes and just ways to try to beat that too high shell and dink and dunk, just like he did with the Eagles, back then. And so I'm telling you, everyone's sleeping on these Chiefs. They're just building something different. It's still going to go fast. It's no longer the Ferrari. Now it's a souped up Mustang. Completely different car, not sexy, but guess what? They're still going to go fast.
It's going to be productive. Listen, this is good business. You turned a 5th round draft choice into 5 draft picks, right? And you got some production and won a Super Bowl along the way. So I'm not on the surface. It makes so much sense, but when it first hit the airways, you were like, oh yeah, I didn't even know that was on the radar, right? So like to me, that's why it was the biggest
that happened
surprise.
So quick. When I saw like the first Schefter tweet, I'm like, wow. I'm like, they're exploring trade. I didn't even had a chance to finish my coffee. I started drinking my coffee. By the time like the first hey, they might trade him. I'm like, okay, we'll see where this goes. And by it's traded, he's already traded. I'm like, damn, I still got half my coffee left.
Dude, it was wild. That did move fast, right? And we'll talk more about this in a moment here. So We still have a handful of questions left, and as we always do, running long. Um, Tell me what you make of the Jacksonville Jaguars this free agency period.
I think it reeks of desperation and a loser's mentality, if you want my honest opinion. You've alluded to before when you brought up the Jacksonville Jaguars. Bad teams have to overpay to attract talent. The Jets did this in 2019 when they made it rain on Le'Veon Bell and C.J. Mosley. Never, came to fruition with their what it thought that was going to be. The Browns did this too in the past as well. Let's take a look at who they brought in. And you mentioned these names: Evan Ingram, Foley Fatukasi, Zay Jones, Christian Kirk, Foye Aluakan, Brandon Scherf, Darius Williams, Arden Key. These are not bad players. I'm not saying they're bad players, right? But now let's look at what they spent on these players that I just named. They spent over $250 million, so $259.5 million, and over $155 million in guarantees for this group. What name pops out at you that like, yeah, this is gonna add some juice to this team? They're good players, but damn, it's like someone getting a new car. They're happy to get that Honda Accord, but their credit's so bad, but they have to spend $600 a month on a Honda Accord. Well, maybe now it's a bad example because car prices are sky high, but you get my drift here. Because their credit score or their reputation is so bad, guess what they have to do? They have to overpay to get into that little sedan.
Yeah, listen, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse here. I mentioned it earlier too that I wanted to put them as the losers of free agency. I think they've redeemed themselves a little bit with that second wave. To your point, good football players that they brought over. They just had to pay out the wazoo to get them here. And this happens. They had the cap room to do it. So you'd be like, if you were a Jaguars fan, like, well, we had the money. That's not the point.
Yeah,
The
but
point
how
is the
competitive they're gonna
reason,
how
yeah,
competitive they're gonna be? What's going on in the AFC right now,
you're
man?
not. You're not. You know what I mean? Like, and what's more telling is $250 million. And like you said, not one of those names pops, right? Like, not one of those names hit like a biggie soundtrack from
Uh huh.
the mid '90s. Right? You know what I mean? Like,
You
it
don't have
just
the
doesn't
or like
exactly.
or
There's
young ho like you
yeah,
don't have
yeah,
that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Jigga man, like you have
You don't
none
have
of that. Like
none of that.
none of that. Did the team get better? I mean, probably they weren't a good football team, but
What
like,
they win 3 games last year? How could they have gotten worse than winning 3 games?
yeah, they do have some picks here. They good news is they didn't have to trade for any of these people. They just went and spent money. But this is what happens, right? Teams who tend to be tend not this season was all season was a little different, but teams that tend to be the busiest and the most aggressive, there's a reason why, right? They don't have superstars that they're paying. They have a huge void of talent, i.e., they need to be aggressive and go find those people. And do you know why players go to Jacksonville? Do you know why players go to teams that these players aren't stupid? They saw what their record was last year to get the bag because you may only get one of these. Christian Kirk only gets one of these contracts in his professional career before he is spotted. I don't want to say he's a fraud. Christian Kirk is a good football player, but he is not 17 to 21 million dollars a year football player.
And they also
Um,
go to Jacksonville because there's no state income tax. So
Hell yeah, and that money goes a long freaking way. I'm thinking about moving to Jacksonville for those reasons. Plus, it's like $8 to go to a football game there.
yeah, just talk to your boy Balky. I'm sure he'll throw you a
Oh,
huge contract to head on down there. Yeah.
Trent Balky, yeah, right. Like he might just sign me to be like his
Yeah.
coffee gopher. All right, I'm really anxious to hear your insight on this one. So this is not what team is the biggest loser. This is what team dropped the ball in free agency.
For me, it has to be the Dallas Cowboys. And I have a theory, and that it's a loser's mentality out there in Big D. This team did not get better. I didn't expect them to be overly active in free agency, but I thought they would do better than what they currently did right now. They traded away Amari Cooper for a fifth rounder while the Dolphins got a third rounder for Devontae Parker. I know it's a third rounder next year, so if you do like the calculations, that's kind of like a fourth rounder this year. Still, Devontae Parker is netting the Dolphins that versus what the Cowboys got. They couldn't get any compensation for Lyle Collins. Are you kidding me? You couldn't get anything for Lyle Collins. The
Yep.
Randy Gregory fiasco now leaves them. It looks makes them look bad and leaves them thin at the edge position. And this is my theory with the Cowboys. Cowboys look around, what's going on? Wow, all the talent's going to the AFC right now, right? This is still and who do we have to worry about? You got the Commanders having Carson Wentz, got the Giants having Daniel Jones, and you got Jalen Hurts and the Eagles up and coming, but they can't sniff our jockstrap right now. We don't have to do anything really right now. We can still win this division and get to the playoffs. That's a loser's mentality. It shows no urgency. It's not cutthroat whatsoever. You're letting teams to get back in to the race and what have you. And it's never been about getting to the playoffs for the Dallas Cowboys. It's been about advancing to the playoffs for the Dallas Cowboys. All right. And what they did, once again, it's going to be like the movie Groundhog's Day. They are going to get kicked out of the playoffs again because they did not do enough to surround that team.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, though, who's probably loving this. This is a great opportunity for Sean Payton to be like, all right, we'll see what happens next year. Because if I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm thinking, oh man, I'm being set up to failure here.
That's the problem, because the Jerry Jones owner GM is like, this roster's good enough to get us to the playoffs. So
I hate that mentality, yo.
my
I
fans
hate
won't
that.
hate us, and then I get rid of you and I replace you with Sean Payton.
And then my fans will like me again.
Mm-hmm.
I hate that mentality.
All right. For me, San Francisco 49ers.
I didn't want to steal your thunder.
No,
They
I was
easily
almost
could be
hoping you
right
did, so I can just echo the
No,
sentiment.
I wanted to give you the floor. They could easily be right there.
And this is not, Lou, you and I talk a lot, right?
No, this is
we
not
talk a lot about this. Has
like
nothing to do
fan.
with lack of aggression in free agency, because they're never aggressive in free agency. Would I like to? You want to know the last time they were aggressive in free agency was 2017, the first year that Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch took over with a very depleted roster and plenty of money, and did everything that I said bad teams did. They inherited a bad football team, right? And they spent money because they could. I mean, this team just played in the NFC Championship game. I'd say we're relatively lucky that we played in that. Some, things broke our way through the season. Some things didn't break our way where we could have probably made it a lot easier on ourselves. But what I'm saying is this team was like 11 minutes away from playing in the Super Bowl is literally what it boils down to. So the roster's there, talent's there. I did not expect us to be active in free agency. In fact, the moves that we did make, I'm actually okay with. Charvarius Ward. You and I were in the middle of doing a show with the dude from the Kansas City Chiefs. And like 5 minutes after we ended the show, you and I were just rapping, and boom, the announcement came across that they signed Charvarius Ward after both of us talked about that's somebody that they should look at. Happy with that. Where else were we weak as a team throughout the season? Don't let that one Green Bay game fool you that where special teams won the game for us and scored the only touchdown. Special teams was very weak for us. They've been aggressive in adding special teams talent. Why the team dropped the ball is still this Jimmy G situation. That's literally it, what it boils down to. And this goes back to listen, do you think John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan for 1 second give a fuck what the fans think? They don't. Period. Point blank. They don't lose any sleep over it whatsoever. And I kind of understand the mentality of I have a value associated to this guy. If nobody's going to give me that value, I have two potential starting quarterbacks. Somebody's going to get injured. Somebody's going to need somebody to get something for him. The problem is they overvalued it. They overplayed their hand. And now you're left in a scenario. And I don't know what's happening. I have no sources, right? I don't know what's happening behind the scene. For all I know, Kyle and Jimmy have been like, Trey, don't even worry about this. This will all work itself out. Don't lose an ounce of sleep over this whatsoever. But it's just this lingering issue. And to me, why it's a lingering issue is that's $25 million to spend in this aggressive free agency period. Am I saying they would have gone and spent it all? No. What I am saying is maybe that is the difference of keeping Arden Key. Maybe
DJ
that's the
Jones.
difference. DJ Jones. Tomlinson was gone. They were never going to pay that for a guard anyway, and they drafted his replacement last year. Knew that from the get-go. I wanted Tomlinson to stay. He's been, I mean, dude, we traded a 5th-round pick for him, and he didn't miss a game in 5 years. Like, talk about return on your investment, but we'll get a comp pick for him. We'll get a comp pick for DJ Jones. We'll be rewarded for all this. The little issue that I'm having is starting to rear its ugly head like right now. And it's this little Debo Samuel saga. Now, this is a negotiation tactic. We all know it. I'm going to delete my Instagram photos and I'm going to remove the 49ers. Like Kyler Murray did this 3 weeks ago, right? Is Kyler Murray still an Arizona Cardinal? Sure is. Is Debo Samuel still a San Francisco 49er? Last I checked, he's got 1 more year to go. Last I checked, he sits out. He gets fined $40,000 a day that he sits out. And he's in the last year of his contract from second. He can't even afford to sit out more than 3 weeks before his entire salary is evaporated. And oh, by the way, if he wants to not play the entire season and play hardball because he wants to go somewhere else or demands a contract, it changes his free agency status. He's now a restricted free agent, not an unrestricted free agent. So the 49ers still own his rights. The 49ers are still in the driver's seat here, but maybe.
Damn, they're making it hard on themselves, man.
They do. This is Parag math, bro. He's like the shrewdest negotiator, but not in a good way. You know what I mean? Like they just have a value and they don't want to cross that value. And the problem that they're having with Debo is he's not just a wide receiver. You saw what he did. He created a new position, whatever they call it, the wide back, right? Like now you have to tamper that. And he sees what Devontae Adams got paid. He sees what Tyreek Hill got paid. He sees what Christian Kirk, Stephon Diggs, what all these guys are getting paid. And you can't tell me he's not worth similar money. Like what he did, dude, you could argue he was the most explosive offensive weapon in the NFL last year because of what he did. Like when that man touched the ball, it just had home run written all over it. First down, big play, etc. But here is the Jimmy G saga rearing its ugly head. He's gone. Maybe you're a little bit more comfortable with what you want to allocate. And I know it's there. And I know they can re-sign him and Bosa and do all that. Maybe it just happens a little faster. Maybe it doesn't slow things down. Dude, we're in April. Most of the time, these extensions don't happen until June or July anyway. But I think the reason why, to me, the 49ers have dropped the ball is because they dropped the ball in saying, a lesser quarterback, in my opinion, got us to the NFC Championship game last year. And he had a lot of things around him that were right. But now we're going to ask an inexperienced, who, in my opinion, has the potential to be a better quarterback, to do more with less when we're in a position to actually give him a little more. I'm not saying go trade for Devontae Adams or sign this person or sign that, just little pieces, right? Can we just go find another run-of-the-mill, maybe center or whatever it is? Can we put another pass rusher opposite of Nick Bosa, please? Right? It's just those things that are lingering. And I do think if Jimmy G was even gone, they would not be super aggressive. But I think
but you guys would have the ability to retain your own, though.
Yes. And to me, that's a big deal.
That's a huge deal.
Especially with a team that just played in the NFC Championship. The year before were marred by the most injuries I've ever seen on a football team in 1 year in my entire life. And the year before that, we're playing in a Super Bowl, right? The team is good. And that doesn't warrant going out and spend. But in your own division, teams like the Rams, I just won the Super Bowl, but I'm still going to go spend. I'm still going to trade draft picks. I'm going to still do that. An opportunity to be aggressive. And Lou, you and I talk all the time. Never once did I had this disillusion that they were going to be aggressive. What I really thought was they were going to take this opportunity. And if they parted ways with Jimmy, it was going to be about retaining their roster, not having to go find new names to replace it.
Take care of your own. The guys who got you there, 100% agree. In my opinion, I think like I said, I mean, if this is probably 1A, Cowboys is 1B. Who dropped the ball? And you're talking about from a financial standpoint. Let's talk about from a locker room standpoint, right? You have veterans that work with Jimmy G or Team Jimmy G. Now I'm not saying there is, but there could be a possible confusion, divide. How do we show support to the guy that we've been with, during this whole time, and also show support to a rookie quarterback. You can't date two people at the same time. You can't have two wives. You have to be all in. And in my opinion, I think that this could be a lead to disaster for a young rookie or young, second year quarterback because of the uncertainty. The one play, if he makes a bad play, he has to look over his shoulder. They got to get rid of Jimmy G. And I just think I've said this before. I always felt like your team is extremely smart, but also when it comes to intelligence comes arrogance. And I think the arrogance led them to
Caught
dumb
up with
move.
him.
It
Caught
caught
up
up
with him.
and it led up to some dumb moves. Not
Yep.
saying they're dumb. They are. I am a huge fan of Shanahan. Huge fan of Lynch. Just saying they are an arrogant bunch, in my opinion, and it's led up to it's now leads you to this shit show.
Yeah. So here where the rub lies. I had made this comment months ago at this point when we were on Jesse Naylor's show, and I had said,
You did.
"Don't be surprised if Jimmy G's on this roster in 2022." Did I not say that? Like I volunteered that well before any of this happened. I mean, I think we were still in the playoff hunt when we were on Jesse's show, if I
It was
remember
definitely the
correctly.
regular season.
Yeah, like it wasn't even. And I said, "Don't be surprised," and it's because this team doesn't care about conventional wisdom. I agree with you that they carry this sense of arrogance like about them, that they know better than most. And most people will tell you, Lou, and there's been GMs that have come out and said this, never by name, but like quoted by sources like, hey, having two starting quarterbacks in the NFL is never a bad problem. The problem is the optics that it creates. Now, I do trust this franchise enough to say that, like, I am convinced that the proper conversations are taking place behind the scenes. I'm convinced of that. I am starting to err on the side that Jimmy will not be on this roster once the season starts. I think what happened here is they thought there would be a better opportunity to move him. The shoulder surgery slowed that down a little bit, like his market. Other things took place, right? Like even up until the Deshaun Watson failure for the Atlanta Falcons, like Indy still looked like a spot that eventually would be like, all right, F it. I got to make this move, right? Like I got to get in a veteran locker room
Indy
type guy,
didn't want
quarterback.
him, though. Indy did not want him.
Not for what we probably valued him at. So here's the issue is I think the 49ers valued him at X. Other teams valued him Y to Z, somewhere in there. Didn't align. So they are taking some egg on the face right now, and they're selling it to you like, hey, we're fine with keeping him. We allocated for this, like no big deal. Don't be surprised if during the draft he gets moved for like a day 3 pick. Don't be if one of these teams misses out on like a quarterback, a bridge quarterback. Don't be surprised if he's moved, for a pick next year. And that's not even like the whole point would have been to move him right this year to get collateral this year, right? Like that, to me, that time has come and gone for any meaningful collateral. But don't even be surprised if they hold this guy until training camp and see what his shoulder looks like. Not to actually be the guy.
That would be the stupidest thing in the world.
But they're not going to just cut him. The 49er fans, I'm telling you right now, they will not just cut Jimmy Garoppolo. They
Stubborn
won't.
son of a bitches, man.
They won't.
Jeez.
Why would you? Like, why would you though? Like,
I told you why. There could be a possible rip
it's
in the
not.
locker room.
That's not an issue. That's not an issue, dude. That to me, I promise you, that's a non-issue. And here's why it's not an issue. Jimmy won't even make it an issue. He's just not that guy, right? Like he's not like, oh, labor for me. Like he's just not that guy. And I'm telling you, I have the most supreme confidence. And this is not a fan. This is like just what my gut tells me is that the proper conversations are taking place behind the scenes. But like, what if, dude? What if Trey goes down early? I mean, am I all right with paying my backup quarterback $25 million a year? Absolutely not. But am I all right with having Jimmy as my backup quarterback who's played in 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl in his career if my prize possession goes down? Like, yeah, like I'm perfectly fine with that compared to what the other backup options are in the NFL.
You don't live in what ifs. You know my saying. Do you remember my saying with what ifs?
Repeat it.
If my aunt had a dick, she'd be my uncle. You gotta chill with these if scenarios. All right, let's go to the next one.
All right. Let's move through this quick. Well, not. I'm actually going to skip this one question. We'll come back to it because I want to spend a little bit more time. Tell me your most underrated move in free agency.
All right. So I am. You're talking about the best bargain?
No, just underrated move.
Oh, okay. Underrated move for me. It's Lyle Collins to the Bengals, and let me tell you why. It provides some stability at that right tackle position. The Bengals gave up over 55 sacks last year. It was a huge issue when they played Tennessee. It was an issue when they played the Rams. The Bengals did a good job, but this was like the chef's kiss. This was like the cherry on the top that they had to address that right tackle position. And for them to only get Lyle Collins for a 7-year average contract, $7 million average contract, I think was huge. Listen, I get Collins has some little injury history. I get that he's has a history of penalties. However, when you're building an offensive line, Daniel Jeremiah said this one time, and I'm 100% believe this. You don't need 5 first-round draft picks. You don't need 5 studs. You just have to make sure your weakest position is not a scrub. And sometimes just even being mediocre or good and replacing an awful talent at the right tackle position will do wonders.
Yep.
And I think this Lyle Collins and for the amount of money, I mean, his cap hits $4.7 million this year, man, and it's going to provide so much stability, among the Bengals offensive line. So I think that was the most underrated move.
Yeah. I don't disagree with that. We all talked about what they needed to first and foremost improve in free agency, and the end of the
And
draft
they
was going to be
did.
the
They went
offensive
all. Yeah,
line.
they did.
Yeah, and as I should. I mean, they're young and they're skilled everywhere else. To me, the most underrated move, and this is more of a superstar name, but it's Allen Robinson to the Rams. First and foremost, if you look at both you and I had Allen Robinson in our top 10 wide receivers entering the 2021 season, play for the Chicago Bears. We know what that's about, quarterback play, etc. But if you look at what these other wide receivers got paid and what this guy got paid to the tune of like 15 mil a year over like the 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
that's a win. And now, like, I know they lose Bobby Trees. I know Odell's not back there, but like Allen to me has always been your prototypical move the chains, possession type wide receiver, and lets you just put Cooper Kupp wherever you want on the field, wherever you want. And you have to, like, Odell is a good football player, but he's been a shell of himself. This is not the same Odell Beckham that played for the New York Giants. It's not. Like, he just hasn't showed up in that column in a long, long time. He'll make a play here. He'll make a play there. He'll find the end zone, but his stat line typically reads like 3 for 60. You know what I mean? 5 for 60, something like that, and he finds the end zone. And Allen's going to feel that way too. Like, Allen Robinson's stat line's going to feel that way too, but there's going to be a lot of first downs associated to his first name. And this is just going to free Cooper up all over the place because you got to account for number 12. Like, you're going to have to account for him no matter how you cut it. So
Real
to me,
quick,
at that value, that's underrated to me.
Yeah. Real quick, I also wanted to say Marcus Williams to the Ravens. Ravens are always they're always deadly when they have a loaded secondary. They already have Marcus Peters. They have the other cornerback Humphrey, and they're always better when they have a big time safety. Eric Weddle, Reed, Marcus Williams, ball hawk, really young. It's going to let them be able to play some different coverages than they've been playing the last couple of years.
What's your most overrated move?
Randy Gregory to the Broncos. 5 years, $70 million. He's a soon-to-be 30-year-old pass rusher who in his 5 years has never played a full season. Most games he's ever the most games I think he's ever played was like 14. Never had more than 6 sacks in this season. There's questions about his work ethic. Now a pothead is going to Denver to play. I'm sure that's going to, really motivate him as well. And now he's expected to fill in for the Von Miller void and his production. I think I'm just not saying he's bad. And I know he had a good year last year, but you see these things all the time. These players are questionable, always do a little better in their contract year, don't they, Weston? And then they get their bag, and guess what? I can totally see that happen. Von Miller, not Von Miller. Randy Gregory does not, it's not something to sneeze at, but he does not scare me as some of the other names, edge rushers in the AFC West.
Yeah, I mean, this was hard for me because there was like it happens all the time in free agency, just like overpay. Like I could easily just be like overrated move. Like I'm just gonna look at contracts and what people paid and like what's going on with Christian Kirk and what's going on with all these guys, right? For me, the most overrated move, and I am like totally fine with being slandered for this. I don't care. I stand by this. Is Russell Wilson to the Denver Broncos.
I'm going to fade back.
Homer Simpson it out of the equation.
Yeah.
Listen, you gave up 5 draft picks and not just like random draft picks, right? 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and I think like a 4th, right? Or a 5th, it might have been. I'll tell you right now. 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 5th, and 3 players.
2.5 players. Drew Lock, I wouldn't really call him a player.
Mean, Jesus, he's the starting quarterback in Seattle right now, so half a player. But you gave up 8 pieces of collateral for, yes, Russell Wilson, who I'd argue right now to you, Lou, is the 3rd best quarterback in his own division.
You could make that argument.
No, I'm making that argument. So here's the appeal of Russell Wilson. He's a winner. Like we know that, right? Like he's a leader. Like he'll never quit on you. You'll always get his all. Those are just things that like you really can't put a price tag on. That's like what you want from your guy under center. But like the last few years of Russell Wilson, outside of that, what was that? That hot start in 2020 where it was like, let Russ cook, let Russ cook, let Russ cook. And then they started to really like let him cook, and then he just fell off, right? And then last year, finally a chink in the armor. Russell Wilson finally missed games. This guy's in his 30s now, dude. You and I know, as somebody who's on the latter portion of those 30s, is like, shit just feels different when you wake up in the morning. It takes a little bit longer to recover from these injuries. He's took
screw you, Weston. I'm in prime physical.
Yeah. I just think this is a lot to give up, and I don't. There was a point in time maybe where I would say Russell Wilson might put the Broncos over the top, but to me, he just doesn't. And you gave up a lot. Again, for who now could be the 3rd best quarterback in the division. Does it make it more competitive? It does. But let me ask you something. As a quarterback, do you prefer the tandem of DK Metcalf and Drew Lockett? Or do you prefer the tandem of Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy?
See, you're forgetting about Tim Patrick, man. I'd rather those 3 than the other 2, Lockett and Metcalf, I think. I think I would rather the 3 versus those 2.
Okay. Listen, I wasn't going to dispute you either way. I'm asking you your personal opinion.
And better offensive line, too. So,
yeah.
Better defense?
In arguably the best division that football has ever seen.
There is no argument. It is the best division ever.
Yeah. Right now, so, on paper, like...
Yeah, but he wasn't playing in those scrub divisions where he came from, man. He had you guys, he had the Cardinals, he had the Rams. I mean,
no, he wasn't. But he's not invincible anymore. He's just not. He's not immune anymore, and I just think this is when I say overrated. It's like not even so much as what they gave up. It's about what him coming there does from an expectation standpoint. And it's just not going to live up to those expectations.
What was the Denver Broncos record last year? Do you know off the top of your
head? They won. I don't.
I'm looking right now. They were
what they win 8 games?
They were 7-10.
Okay.
To answer your question, how many more wins do you think Russell Wilson gives them? Do you think he gives them 10-7? 3 wins? You don't think he gives them 3 more wins?
Not in this division.
Yo, they won 7 games with Teddy Bridgewater, man. You don't think I don't
Let's,
know.
let's go. Hold on. Let's do a nice little exercise real quick. I'm gonna go to the NFL standings. All right. So they're okay. You ready for this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 wins.
Yeah.
The New York Giants, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the New York Jets, the
Now,
Washington football team, the Dallas Cowboys,
how's it going?
your Chargers,
Mm.
Detroit Lions. That's their 7 wins. They lost to better competition. They're going to lose to better competition.
Well, we'll see.
Dude, they won. So they went 1-5 in the division.
Okay, we'll see.
I would expect them to do. All right. Maybe
I think he gets them 3 more wins.
I think he gets them 9. 9 and 8 is what they end up next year.
Okay.
But
Who knows? That could be like good enough
yeah,
to win a
that
division.
could be good. I mean, no, that's not going to be good enough to win the
No, I
division.
mean, like everyone beats up on each other. Everyone's like 9 and 8.
Yeah. I just like when I go get a player on paper like Russell Wilson, I gave up. Like you need to walk away from that feeling like I'm guaranteed a playoff spot, and they are certainly not that right now.
I think this leads us perfectly to our next question.
Yes.
I think you should ask me first. I think I should, being that this is my home turf. But go ahead.
Yeah. Give me one word to describe the AFC West.
During this free agency,
Yeah.
spiteful.
Bitter.
Let me tell. All right, I'm going to break it down. Ready? This took me a while to do. March 8th, the Broncos acquired Russell Wilson. March 10th, 2 days later, Chargers acquired Khalil Mack. March 15th, Broncos signed Randy Gregory and DJ Jones. March 17th, Chargers signed Sebastian Joseph Day. The next day, the Chargers signed Austin Johnson and J.C. Jackson. All of a sudden, later that night, out of nowhere from the top rope, Raiders traded for Devontae Adams. The next day, March 19th, Raiders not done. They do a frog splash on the top rope. They sign Chandler Jones. 2 days later, they woke up a sleeping giant. And March 21st, the Chiefs signed Juju Smith-Schuster. 3 days later, the Chiefs trade Tyreek Hill for a 2002 first-round pick, a 2002 second-round pick, a 2022 first-round pick, a 2022 second-round pick, a 2022 fourth-round pick, 2023 fourth-round pick, and a 2023 sixth-round pick. Followed by 2 days later, on March 25th, they signed Marquez Valdez-Scantling. And we're talking about all that draft capital. I think the Chiefs have the most draft picks in this year's draft. These teams were straight up spiteful with each other. It was like anything you can do, I can do better. Or it was amazing to see and watch what was going on. It's like, please, there's other divisions and other conference. There's another conference. Go somewhere else. This is getting ridiculous. And you would feel so if you were a fan in this division when your team struck, you were high off the hog. And then that did not last long because then you realize there's more competition coming in within the division. And it's huge because Chargers GM said this, and I actually think it's something pretty smart. When you win a division game, it's like you're winning 2 games because basically you win that game, but you're also kicking your opponent within your division down too. So they have to win. So they have to make up more ground in order to to win that division. So I just think these teams were straight up spiteful, and it all started when the Broncos acquired Russell Wilson on March 8th.
I'd argue that it started earlier. I think it started at the end of the 2020 season when teams were like, yo, this kid Justin Herbert can play football. We weren't expecting that, right?
Or maybe the 2021 season when the Raiders beat the Chargers and basically all that happened, all that I feel like there was a lot of you got some big rivalries out there now.
Yeah. So if I had to do it in a word, it started as epic, like literally again on paper. We have no idea what happens. We have no
Yeah.
idea what happens to anybody once the season starts, but on paper, literally the best 4 teams in a single division of football that I remember in my lifetime. And I used to think that the NFC West for years was the stiffest of competitions. And they were. Like, I'm not delusional in that, but you can't even dispute that in our lifetime of watching football, this is the best division. Epic as somebody who gets to watch from the outside, but epic quickly transitions into disappointment because the San Francisco 49ers play all 4 AFC West teams this year. The
Awful,
NFC
awful
West
year.
plays the AFC West. It is the worst year possible for that to actually happen. But no, honestly, like from the outside looking in, like, I mean, even Epic goes to like, I don't have to see Russell Wilson 2 times a year, who's just a 49ers like slayer. Like all he has to do is breathe and figures out a way to beat us. That was like that in itself was like there is a God, right? I get to watch Seattle just crumble right now with everything that's happening. I mean, they basically traded Russell Wilson to backfill what they gave up for Jamal Adams. You know what I mean? Like that's literally what it boils down to. Um, but it's
I hate him already,
crazy.
but I hate him already though.
Dude,
Look,
he's the corniest dude in the league.
Broncos country, let's ride. I'm like, he has the most punchable face in
Yeah.
the NFL, at least top 3 punchable face right now.
Wow. He's just wait. Dude, you have no idea
It's
what
like
you're in
it
store
goes
for.
like Logan Paul, Russell Wilson, and
Yeah, I hate all of them. Listen, I'm sure
and
Russ is
Machine
like,
Gun Kelly. Those are your
yeah,
top 3 right
yeah,
there.
seriously. I'm sure Russell Wilson is a really good guy. Like, I have no doubt about that. Like, he's the salt of the earth type guy that the NFL loves to have, but like, he's so easy to hate. And you have bro, just wait. You've had a month of this. Just wait. I've had 10 years of this Mr. Unlimited.
All
Like,
right,
just
Brown,
wait,
Brown,
bro. Just
Brown.
wait,
My blood
bro.
pressure.
Just wait. Just wait. You have
I'm,
no fucking clue, bro. Just wait. All right. I want to parlay this because we were talking about the NFC West. So I want to like swing into like specific players, right? Like not just like scenarios, but specific players. Coming off of the AFC West, Tyreek Hill to the Miami Dolphins is
what am I doing, Weston?
Nick Bosa. That's what you're doing is the Nick Bosa after he gets a sack celebration.
No,
I don't know.
I'm shrugging.
I don't know.
I'm shrugging. I think it's TBD. I think you have to see what the plan is for Hill. If you want my honest opinion, I know you don't like Tua, but your boy McDaniel is out over there in actually out there in Miami. Are they going to try to incorporate Hill like a Debo? But why would they sign such a huge contract? He's supposed to be coming in to be added like a strength to a weakness and improve that vertical passing game. So if they're not going to use him like that, I find it interesting why they're paying all this money. And I also feel like seldom does a wide receiver come in and makes a quarterback better.
Ever.
Meaning like a mediocre or a bad quarterback better. Look at T.O. Just a couple thoughts in my head. T.O. To the Buffalo Bills, Decker, Eric Decker to the Jets. I just feel like I can't think of any off the top of my head, but like it never happens. But yeah, if you have faith in Mike McDaniel with no S, by the way, and his thought process, it could be electric. It could be, but I don't know. I think it's TBD.
Yeah. Sorry, Dolphins fans, but I think this is a mistake. And listen, I applaud Mike McDaniel. He's my guy. I love him. Super smart guy. I was so sad when he left. We'll appreciate the 2 third round compensatory picks for him being promoted to a head coach. But at the end of the day, like you can't ever fault a guy for going to make a splash, right? Like you get a short window in this league, like go get playmakers, like totally get it. But you gave up 5 draft picks and now signed this guy to a $30 million per year contract. Yes, this year it's like $8 million the cap hit. Next year it's almost $32 million the cap hit. It's going to be tough to hide that money in year 2 of the contract. You're going to be able to hide it maybe in the third, fourth year, but it's going to be tough. But it's just a lot to give up that a dude whose predominant production rests on the shoulders of arguably the best quarterback in the NFL right
Yeah.
now. We were talking about this before with Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers. Like, the wide receiver can't be the better of the equation. It's not, you just mentioned, a wide receiver doesn't often make a quarterback better. It makes a quarterback's job easier.
I'm not gonna say better. It doesn't make a mediocre quarterback better. Like
Yeah.
when have you seen like an average quarterback and they brought in like a weapon,
And
a
all of a
big
sudden the
time.
guy's making pro balls and getting
Yeah,
all pro.
I
Nah,
feel like
it doesn't happen.
that's so rare, man.
Yeah. I just think you can expect a huge production. Huge reduction in production. You know how I feel about Tua, right? So this is Tyreek Hill coming from Patrick Mahomes as your quarterback, Andy Reid as your play caller. I love Mike McDaniel, but I promise you he's not Andy Reid yet in his professional career, right? Like, Andy Reid's been doing this a long time. I have zero faith in Tua. What is Tyreek's signature? He can beat you downfield. What does Tua not do well? He can't push the ball downfield, at least through 2 years of his professional career. We have not seen that. I think you're right. I think McDaniel sees similarity in, like, hey, I can scheme Debo. I mean, I can scheme Tyreek up like I did Debo, which I think is a huge mistake. First of all, they're not built the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Second of all, this is what I think some of the problems the 49ers are having with how much that Debo wants to get paid. It's like, damn, dude, if I pay you that money, I can't use you the same way because I'm taking years off of your professional football life by lining you up in the backfield. Tyreek's not built that way. So you have to be a little bit more gimmicky. It's going to have to be jet sweeps. You can't literally just line him up behind the quarter. He can't run between the tackles. Can't. He's not. I mean, Debo's profile since he came out is this is a running back who plays wide receiver, right? Like, that's never been, like, you can't recreate Tyreek Hill's profile. And oh, by the way, Debo just completed his 3rd year in the NFL. Tyreek's been a little bit around a little bit longer, getting a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just think that's a lot to give up for a dude who unquestionably production is going to drastically drop. I literally have no doubt of that. Like, I can't look at Tyreek Hill and say he's 1,000-yard receiver next year. Like, I just literally can't believe it.
And there's an extra game in the season. Don't forget there's an extra game in the season.
It don't matter. Maybe. This guy's 700-800 yards next year, dude.
Oh, can you say it? Look in the camera and say that because I'm going to clip this.
700 to 800 yards next year for Tyreek Hill.
Wow. I'll bet you.
What do you do this year?
Doesn't matter. I'll bet you the over.
All right, I'll bet you. I'm 800. We'll set it at 800. $10 right now.
$10. No, barring injury. What if he gets injured? I mean, that's not fair.
It is what it is.
All right, whatever. It's $10.
I lost a bet to my next door neighbor where I had to do some of his landscaping work because Jerry Jeudy missed 3/4 of the year, and I bet him Jerry Jeudy would be more productive this year.
So you have precedent of making bad bets. I got it. Okay, we're good.
Yeah.
All right, next one.
I moved away because I wanted to see what Tyreek did. All right, which player to you was the best bargain, best bang for their buck?
I'm gonna sound like a homer here, man.
You have to. You have to.
And I think for me, it's J.C. Jackson, and let me tell you why. Signing with the Los Angeles Chargers, his $82.5 million contract value is 5th among cornerbacks. 5th. His average per year value ranks 6th among quarterbacks. His total guarantee of $40 million ranks him 8th among cornerbacks. And by the way, most interceptions in the last 10 seasons, J.C. Jackson ranks 10th on that list with 25 interceptions. Why am I applauding someone who is so far down that list? He's only been in the league for 4 years. So if he ranks 10th with the most interceptions over the last 10 years, and he's only been a part of that for 4 of those 10 years, that's insane. The players that have more interceptions than him over the last 10 years: Richard Sherman, Marcus Peters, Harrison Smith, Xavier Howard, Stephon Gilmore, Tayshaun Gibson, Janoris Jackson, Patrick Peterson, and Tyrann Mathieu. All players who are at least 7 to 9 years in their production.
All with probably each one All-Pro associated to their
You
name
got
as well.
exactly. So you got a ton. So here you are. You have a cornerback, a diva position, looking to get paid. You would think he would want to be to outdo the Ramsey deal, or or some other of the top deal, but he settled for top 5.
Yeah, listen. Do you know how I feel about J.C. Jackson? Like we talked about
Yeah,
this.
when
Right?
remember in our in our little draft there we had, you were pissed that you didn't take him.
Yeah. Like
The
I'm,
ball hawk, man.
and it's and this is not just like, oh, like I fell in love with his production last year. Like I talked about him going into our top corners like going into the season. I just can't ignore his style of play, man. He's just
He plays man, he plays zone, like, and
he's
they're gonna need him.
opportunistic.
They're
He's
gonna need him
opportunistic. Yeah, man.
with Adams in that division,
Yep.
and you got they're gonna
Hey,
need
job
him.
just got a little easier. There's no Tyreek Hill. But I thought you were going to actually go Khalil Mack, right? Just giving up a second and a sixth for a guy that just a few years ago got moved for 2 1s. And the sexiest thing about Khalil Mack is he only counts it for $8.5 million against the cap this year. To work that out, that's pretty special. To me, I'm going to go with Amari Cooper in this instance. And I looked at, like, I had Allen Robinson on my list. I had Khalil Mack on my list. But I was looking more at like the trade guys versus like the free agency spend. And to me, for the Cleveland Browns to bring in a guy essentially like Amari Cooper, who is a still a number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, for essentially a 5th round pick, like they swapped 6 rounds, right? So like a 5th round pick. And I know Dallas needed to free up the salary, blah, blah, blah. But Cleveland took advantage of the scenario. And to get a dude like Amari, with his production, his experience, his route running ability for a 5th round pick, I just don't know how you can dispute that that's not a bargain price, right? Like I'm sure there's many NFL teams that saw that trade actually take place and they're like, I wish I just picked up the phone. Like I literally just like
the issue with that
was the cap number.
Was the cap number.
Yeah,
there was like only like I think like 8 to 9 teams that
but we all said
maybe
the
even
cap's
less
not real, right?
that had the cap and the need for a wide receiver. I think that was the issue, Weston.
Yeah. I mean, listen, like, but still, when as a general manager in the NFL, like when you see that news come across your phone or, one of your scouts tells you that, you're like, I don't care how set I am at wide receiver. Like did you not just like open us up talking about how going to the 11 personnel and the 3 wide receivers and blah, blah, blah. Like if the salary cap is fictitious, as we all believe it is, and to some extent, I'd give up a 5th round pick for Amari Cooper every day of the week.
Yeah.
No?
Yeah, no. I like Cooper.
All right. 2 more, and we got to get out of here.
Let's do it.
Aaron Rodgers staying in Green Bay is
painfully predictable. All right, so it was like watching an episode of Euphoria and a dysfunctional love affair between Maddie and Nate. Do you watch Euphoria?
No.
You
is it on CBS?
You old bastard.
Yeah.
But all kidding aside, the Aaron Rodgers fiasco was like I said, like watching an episode of Euphoria and dysfunctional love affair between Maddie and Nate. I'm going to go into a little further detail for the people who are NFL fans and watch this great show. Green Bay is obviously Nate here, and they did Aaron, who is Maddie in this analogy, wrong by selecting Jordan Love and never drafting a first-round wide receiver. Now, Matty Rodgers wanted to make Green Bay pay because they flirted with the quarterback. So he played these mind games with them until they showed him their love for him and how they told him how beautiful he was and how much they needed him. But guess what? By the the Green Bay Packers showing their love for Aaron Rodgers, it ultimately pushed away Matty Rogers' friend away from him, who's Cassie Devontae Adams. So basically, you would be laughing more and understand this more. I know people who watch Euphoria would understand this analogy, but basically, because they show the love to Aaron Rodgers, it screwed up another relationship, just like in the show. And it's heartbreaking. It's annoying. It's repetitive. It's just we've seen this before with Rodgers. We've seen this before with Brett Favre. Why didn't he learn from his predecessor? Instead, he repeated the error of his heir. So
Yeah. For me, this is just Green Bay is foolish and Aaron Rodgers is the smug prick you all thought he was. We were all sold on the fact that like if he stayed in Green Bay, it's to run it back. Like this is the team that gives him the best chance to win a Super Bowl, or at least to be in the Super Bowl, especially with all this talent fleeing to the AFC right now. Like the NFC is like prime for the taking. It's like prime for the taking. Yeah, like you got to just win 10 games, and like you might be the number one seed at this point in time. But he showed his true colors, especially if you want to believe that he knew Adams was going to be shipped before he even signed his extension. You're going to tell me the guy that like is your partner in crime, the Robin to your Batman, that like Aaron Rodgers, you don't need the money. If it's about legacy, go win another Super Bowl, not being a $50 million a year quarterback versus a $43 million a year quarterback to bring your guy back, to help go get other pieces that you said this team is not like. Your gripe was this team is not surrounding me with the pieces what I need, and you just literally prohibited them from doing that by signing this contract, which tells me everything that I need to know about you. It's always about the money. It'll always be about the money, and it has nothing to do with anything else. And that's fine. He just tries to paint a different narrative than what it really is. So to me, I'm over it. It is what it is. Green Bay is not the same team. I said this earlier in our show. They're just lucky that they play in the NFC North, because so long as they have number 12 under center, they'll most likely win the division. But that'll be it. They'll be the Dallas Cowboys. They won't advance anywhere in the playoffs. The team's not talented enough to do that right now.
yeah, I think that's what makes Tom Brady so. It makes him the
He's
GOAT.
never been the highest paid quarterback in the NFL ever.
Yeah. So I think that's what makes him the GOAT. I think we got one last question now.
Yep. So Lou, who is the best remaining unsigned free agent? And there's a handful of them, man.
Yeah,
There's
no,
a
it's
handful
still
of names still out there.
yeah. For me, one of the premium positions out there is the edge position, and I was looking at the remaining free agents. I think I know who you're going to go with, but I'm going with someone different. I'm going to say Jadeveon Clowney. Quietly hit a really good year last year, opposite of Myles Garrett. He had 9 sacks, 11 tackles for a loss, 19 QB hits, and oh yeah, he just turned 29 years old. I think
I
that's
still
where
can't
separate.
believe that. I
So
can't believe that he's
I
not
know.
even
So
30 yet.
looking at all the other free agents that I thought, I'm like, oh, he's good. 31, 32 years old. The fact that Clowney just turned 29, meaning he still has a lot more juice left in the tank. I don't think he's going to show any, a serious regression over the next couple of years. Like maybe a 31 or 32-year-old who if I had to guess who you're probably going to say is 31 year old individual coming up for your pick. But for me, it's Jadeveon Clowney. He plays a premium position, young, had a good year last year. Give me Clowney.
Yeah, I mean, I do think at this point in his career, Clowney is a quote unquote number 2, right? Like he's a complementary
He's
piece on that
solid. He's
defensive
solid.
line. Yeah, he's
He never
solid.
he never lived up to that hit
No,
out of
he was
against
never the
Michigan.
number 1 overall pick. Yeah, that one hit against Michigan, like literally, like like the statement of his career.
It's funny, real quick. Like I had like a little website back in the day, and that was like the first year I had that. And I was the only one who I feel like who had Khalil Mack as the number 1 overall player that year. I loved his versatility. I just thought he was a way better player. And it's just funny how, that's how long I've been good at this game here, Weston. That's how long. People thought I was crazy. I remember people thinking like, nah, it's Clowney. He's an athletic freak and what have you. I go, give me Mac.
Has a 2A player ever gone number 1 overall?
Has a what?
a 2A, a 1AA, or FCS, whatever they call it now. Ever gone number 1 overall? I'd have to look that up.
What
I mean,
Wentz?
I know Wentz went 2, right?
Two,
Didn't
Wentz.
Goff went 1?
That's right. Yeah.
I mean,
Fisher now.
Trey Lance just went 3. Was Eric Fisher the number 1 overall pick?
Yeah, but where'd he go?
Central Michigan. They might be They might be 1. They're not 1A. 1AA. I mean, what was Mac? 5, right? What do you go 5 overall?
I think right around there. I think
Oakland?
3, 4, something like that.
Yeah, I mean, he was a beast out of Buffalo. But that's the thing, right? Like, because the mind tells you, like, if he's that good, how did he not get to one of these other teams? You know what I mean? Like, that's what the mind does, dude. The mind plays tricks on you. The mind plays tricks on people. And you weren't wrong, like, going back and looking at it. But, like I'm saying, in the eyes of an NFL scout,
talk about Jerry Rice. How do all those other teams miss on him?
What do you go, 26?
Well, I'm talking about his college when he went to college.
I know. Yeah.
So,
Mississippi Valley State.
Yeah, like
yeah, I know.
About it. Why wasn't he with USC?
Yeah.
Just saying.
There's like you said, a few good names out there. Clowney, Odell, Dwayne Brown, right? For people who are looking for O-line help. For me, this is actually really easy. And it's Tyrann Mathieu.
He's 31.
30. He turns 30 this year.
Yeah, but when does he turn 31?
He turns 30 in May.
No, really?
Yes.
Maybe I got wrong information then. I thought he turned 31.
Let's
I mean, I could be every now and then, Weston, I'm wrong. You know, it's like it's like an eclipse. Like it's like an eclipse. It's like a
hold on,
a leap year. A leap year.
So he was born May 13th, 1992. So that's 8 years to 2022. He'll be 30 in May.
Okay, I stand corrected. I apologize.
I thought you were thinking of somebody when you said 31. Like, oh, there's 31-year-old player. I was like, well, my guy's not 31 yet. He's not even 30 yet.
I thought you're right. He's only 20. Jesus Christ, he's only 29. I didn't know that.
So in the last 3 years, Matthew's made 3 Pro Bowls. I know that means nothing, but he's got 2 first-team All-Pro nods. That means something. He's got a Super Bowl in the last 3 years. Lou, if you recall back to when, like, the Honey Badger was coming out of LSU, what was the biggest knock on him?
Off the field stuff?
Yeah, off the field. Irresponsible, immature, smoking weed, blah, blah, blah. He's just not that man anymore. Like, he's an NFL veteran. Like, I actually follow him on Twitter, and he's one of my favorite follows. Everything's about his children. It's about his wife. It's about like he's just a different person than he was, as we all are, than we were at 20 and 21 years old. To me, yes, like, he's turning 30, which is the age of death usually in the NFL. More importantly for running backs, but like, this guy still got good football in front of him, and he's become a leader. He's become he's a savvy vet, and I think whatever team signs him, I want my own team to sign him, for the record. Whatever team signs him, their defensive backfield is instantly better. Instantly better. He's better than what's on their team right now. He might just not be younger. He might not be cheaper. He's going to command a couple bucks, and he may not want to play for under a certain dollar amount because he's made money. He's ventured through the NFL at this point, but he's still a prize to be won for sure, along with many others. But you know me, dude. I'm always a sucker for the defensive backfield.
I'm going to say this. Just stay out of the AFC West. Just go somewhere else, man.
Well, he's not going back to Kansas City, so that's one less team you have to worry. He's not going to go to Denver. They're plenty fine at safety, so he does really feel like a guy who would end up in Las Vegas.
You're a piece of shit.
Well, listen, I want him to come to San Francisco. I do. I actually prefer that we would re-sign Jaquiski Tartt.
I don't think he's going to. Apparently, Peter Schrager was saying that, like, or no, I think it was Ian Rappaport, that, like, he's not going to – you're not going to get him for, like, a 1-year deal for, like, $9 million. He wants money, man. And he wants to be in a contender.
And his resume says that he warrants that. You know what I mean?
You guys are a contender, but
we can't pay him what he wants to be paid.
You don't have that do-re-mi.
Not with number 10 on the roster. And this is where that rub lies that we talked about earlier. So, yeah, exactly. All right, Lou, that wraps us up here this evening. So this was our recap of the 2022 NFL free agency period. We try to do a little bit different than we did last year, put a little different spin on it. Certainly hope you enjoy it. We are now going to be heading full steam into draft season with the 2022 NFL draft, just a few short weeks, excuse me, away. So we'll be back in short order with our annual draft coverage. We're still sounding out a few things as to exactly what that's going to look like, but definitely expect a mock at the very least, right? Like that.
Love me some mocks.
That is going to happen. But
Weston, we got to get those ESPN sounds back in, like the selection.
I know. Maybe we do go visit Ming just for
I think for a draft show.
Our stretch show. Maybe we can finally convince him to let us sit in that front room that I told him I always wanted to sit in, when we're just sitting there on the couch and people walking by in the building can see you.
Let's do it.
He'll do it. I'll hit him up. But Lou, like I always do, remind everybody where they can follow us.
You can follow us on Instagram and Twitter at WTF Pod NFL, and Weston, tell them where they can find us on YouTube.
Real simple on YouTube. We're talking football. Hit the likes, hit the subscribe button. Just a quick reminder to everybody that I did promise Lou, if we got to 500 YouTube followers by the end of the 2022/2023 NFL season, I am taking Lou out for a very expensive dinner. That was my commitment to him. So we're going to hold y'all accountable to funnel in those subscribers to us. Yeah, Lou's gonna starve himself over 9 months to go out, make me drop a G note on dinner. But if we get to that point, I will gladly do it. Until then, we'll catch up with y'all soon and look forward to draft coverage. Yep. Adios.